Alright, today we're going to start taking a look at the digestive system and how that is going to be affecting the human body. We're start taking a look at digestion. What does it really end up meaning? Digestion really talks about two different processes. Those processes incorporate not only the chemical breakdown, but they also incorporate the mechanical breakdown. The chewing is the mechanical portion of that, and the chemical is the saliva. One of the common things that you guys have probably done before at some time is a cracker test, where you put a cracker in your mouth and you started chewing it up, but you realize that that cracker started to become really, really sticky. That is due to the chemicals that are actually inside of your mouth starting to break down the starches already in the cracker, and that is one of the enzymes that you're going to see that does that is the enzyme called amylase, one of those very first ones that starts to break down. The other thing is the process of chewing, which is the mechanical process, and that is called mastication. Mastication is the use of that masseter muscle that is attached to the zygomatic process and that mandible that is used to chew up your food into smaller and smaller pieces. We'll see here in a little bit what are the actual teeth that we do have that allows us to do so. Alright, and we can separate out the actual digestive tract and the two different processes that occur in digestion to the actual tube that's going to lead through. And that tube is called the alimentary canal, the AC. Another term we can use instead of AC is GI. GI refers to gastrointestinal. Gastrointestinal. It's approximately 9 meters in length. And so 9 meters, up to about 27 feet long. And the majority of that is actually going to be dealing with the small intestine. As we work our way through, here's one of the illustrations you'll be seeing on your test that just talks about mapping the entire alimentary canal, or the food source, as it works its way through. As we mentioned just a little bit ago, that food is going to start actually the digestion process in the mouth. In the mouth, the chewing, the breakdown of the food particle from larger pieces into smaller pieces, and with the help of the salivary glands, make what's called a bolus of food. Bolus is the actual wadded up food particle that you were chewing on, and with the chemical process. Now, we're going to look at about a swallowing process, how that actually takes place here in a little bit, but our food is actually going to work its way back to the long muscular tube made up of smooth muscle. Remember, smooth muscle, involuntary muscle, controlled by the autonomic portion of the peripheral nervous system. That muscle is going to undergo peristalsis. That peristalsis there is shown as the rhythmic waves that contract that food basically from the mouth all the way to anus. It's going to propel that food all the way through the digestive tract. Once it reaches the base of the digestive, or of the esophagus, it's going to enter into this hollow J-shaped organ there. The J-shaped organ, I'll kind of map it out here for you, is the stomach. Now, in the stomach, there's going to be, the food is going to be mixing. Now, what it mixes with is a whole bunch of gastric enzymes. Enzymes that are going to aid in digestion. One example of those enzymes would be like pepsin, which helps to break down proteins. The stomach itself is the very start of where we're going to see some absorption. Absorption of water and some alcohols are going to be within inside the stomach. Now, the food particles are going to be broken into smaller and smaller pieces, and they're going to end up going through a process called just mixing. And it's going to work its way into the first section of the small intestine. And so, as you can see, right where I stopped, I'll try and do a different color now, so you can kind of see it. It looks like a little reddish coloration. That first section of the small intestine is the duodenum, or duodenum, however you'd like to say it. Alright, from that duodenum, we're going to connect into the second section of the small intestine, which is the jejunum, and eventually lead its way all the way into the third section. That's all in here, into the ileum. The ileum is actually the longest section, and the ileum is actually going to connect to the next section, right in that location, to the large intestine. And that spot right there is called the ileocecal sphincter, where it's going to move its way in, or the ileum, and then the cecum is the actual connection point. At the base of the cecum, there's this little finger-like projection right down there. That is your appendix. Many of you guys have probably heard of that thing before. It's one that's prehistorically thought to digest wood. It's really serves us no purpose right now, and it's sometimes people end up getting removed if you get fecal materials backed up in there, and inflammation of that starts, which again causes your appendicitis. Now from there, food is going to be traveling its way up the ascending colon. Now from the ascending and transverse colon, those two colons are portions of the large intestine where it spends the majority of the absorption time. There, you're going to see the majority of your water and electrolytes being absorbed. This last one, which is over here, is your descending colon. I shouldn't say last one, but it's your one colon that is going to be just kind of a conduit into your storage area. And your storage area is going to be this area down here, which is your sigmoid colon, rectum, and anus. And that could be up into that area anywhere from 12 to 15 hours. It could be stored in that area, eventually making that of your stool, which you will then expel. Now, in terms of the large intestine, the average light you'd actually see of food spent in the large intestine could be around 24 hours, depending upon how much and how quickly your digestive tract works. If the food materials transfer through the large intestine too quickly, not absorbing the water and electrolytes, you can have an issue with that known as diarrhea. If it's taking too long, more than 24 hours, and taking out too much water and electrolytes, you can end up having another problem known as constipation. All right, let's move our way into our next slide. Here's just kind of mapping it out. If we were to stretch it out from that full 9 meters, just kind of works your way from the tongue, where again digestion first starts, all the way down through the esophagus to the stomach. Stomach is where you're going to see the mixing take place, but the majority of that is going to be all in here. That is your small intestine, where its main job is to absorb those nutrients that you just started breaking down in the mouth. And what was not being able to breaking down, you then take it into the large intestine, where it just reabsorbs some extra water and electrolytes, as well as some vitamin K from that helping the breakdown of the bacteria, and eventually will then expel through the rectum and anus. Okay. All right. From there, we're going to move our way on to again those types of movements that are going to be occurring through the alimentary or the GI tract. And those two movements are going to be known as mixing and propelling. Mixing and propelling. The mixing is going to be taking place in the stomach. Propelling is through that peristaltic type waves from the esophagus all the way down through those intestines. Now, those mixing movements occur in the mouth muscles. I talked about the mastication process, and eventually is going to be forced its way down on through into the next section. Propelling, which you mentioned already, those peristaltic waves, the rhythmic contractions from mouth to anus that force the food, the mass of food from that bolus that we swallowed at the very beginning down into the stomach, where more mixing occurs. And that liquid that is in the stomach, so the mixture of the bolus and the gastric juices, now called chyme. That chyme is spelled C-H-Y-M-E. That chyme now is going to be entering into the first section of that small intestine after it's mixed in that stomach. That first small intestine section again is the duodenum or the duodenum. Moving our way into our next slide, we'll actually just to show you an illustration of that bolus of food that's going to be contracting down through the esophagus and or the mixtures that's taking place in the stomach through those gastric juices and eventually forcing its way through that first section of that small intestine. That's where we'll stop today. We'll move our way into section 2 tomorrow.